At 75 years old, the man who once embodied Hollywood sophistication now finds himself confronting a stage of life that few ever imagined for him. Richard Gere built his reputation on charisma, elegance, and a calm confidence that defined many of his most beloved performances. Yet behind that polished public persona lies a life story far more layered and complicated than most audiences ever realized. As the passage of time reshapes both his career and personal journey, a series of unexpected challenges have cast a somber tone over what many assumed would be peaceful golden years. For fans who spent decades watching him captivate audiences on screen, the reality of this later chapter in his life can feel almost too difficult to accept. Long before he became a recognizable figure in Hollywood, Richard Gere carried emotional struggles that quietly shaped the deeper layers of his personality. Raised in a modest household in upstate New York, he was frequently described by those around him as reflective, sensitive, and deeply introspective. However, beneath that composed exterior was a lingering feeling of separation from others. During his teenage years, Gere often grappled with a sense of alienation, feeling as though he stood slightly apart from the world around him. Although he performed well academically and demonstrated notable talent in music and performance, these achievements did little to calm the internal unease that followed him. As he moved into early adulthood and began pursuing a career in acting, these emotional complexities only intensified. The demanding and highly competitive nature of the theater world, combined with the uncertainty that accompanies artistic ambition, deepened his feeling of disconnection. In later years, Gere would reflect on this period as one marked by a profound psychological loneliness. It was not merely the experience of being physically alone, but the deeper sensation of feeling misunderstood and spiritually unsettled. He has spoken openly about an internal restlessness that seemed to accompany him everywhere, describing it as a search for meaning that fame or success alone could never fulfill. Yet rather than destroying him, these early struggles ultimately transformed him. The discomfort drove him inward, encouraging deep reflection and gradually leading him toward a path of spiritual discovery. During his 20s, Gere began practicing meditation and eventually embraced the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, where he discovered a philosophical framework that helped him understand suffering, compassion, and the nature of human experience. Over time, he developed a close personal connection with Dalai Lama, whose teachings had a profound influence on his worldview and personal philosophy. When Richard Gere married supermodel Cindy Crawford in December 1991, their relationship instantly became one of the most photographed and talked about unions in Hollywood. At the time, Gere was already a celebrated leading man known for films like Pretty Woman, while Crawford stood at the absolute peak of her global modeling fame. The pairing of a highly respected actor with one of the most recognizable faces in the fashion world fascinated journalists and fans alike, placing their romance under intense and constant media scrutiny from the very beginning. Despite the glamorous image that surrounded them, the marriage quietly faced its own internal pressures. The couple's 17-year age difference became a recurring topic in tabloids, and both individuals were managing careers that required constant international travel and demanding schedules. Gere remained deeply committed to his acting career as well as his spiritual pursuits, while Crawford's modeling career required her to travel frequently around the globe. The relentless attention from the press, combined with rumors and speculation from tabloids, created an environment where true privacy became nearly impossible. Eventually, in 1995, after fewer than 4 years together, the couple finalized their divorce. The marriage did not produce any children, but the emotional impact of the separation was significant for Gere. It marked one of the first major public turning points in his personal life. The collapse of such a high-profile relationship also invited intense media analysis, forcing him to process heartbreak while the entire world watched. Later, after finding love again with actress and former model Carrie Lowell, Richard Gere seemed to establish a more stable and private family life. The couple married in 2002 after welcoming their son, Homer James Jigme Gere, in 2000. For many years, they maintained a relatively quiet lifestyle compared to his earlier highly publicized relationship, choosing instead to focus on raising their child away from the constant glare of tabloid headlines. However, beneath this calmer exterior, tensions slowly began to develop over time. By September 2013, reports emerged confirming that the couple had separated. At the time, various sources suggested that differences in personality and lifestyle played a significant role in the breakdown of the marriage. Gere was widely known for his reflective and spiritually focused approach to life, whereas Lowell was often described as having a more socially active personality. Although neither of them publicly revealed the precise details of their disagreements, it soon became clear that reconciliation was unlikely. What followed was not a quick resolution, but a prolonged and emotionally draining legal battle. Their divorce proceedings extended for nearly 3 years before finally concluding in October 2016. The lengthy process reportedly included complicated negotiations regarding major financial assets, including real estate properties, as well as arrangements involving their son. While many details remain confidential, the extended duration of the legal process highlighted just how complex and difficult the separation had become. In July 2016, Richard Gere endured a deeply personal loss when his mother, Doris T. Gere, passed away at the age of 91. Although she had lived a long and fulfilling life, her passing marked the quiet end of an important chapter in his life. The loss of a parent whose influence had shaped his character long before fame entered the picture. Doris was widely known as a devoted mother and a stabilizing presence within the family. Growing up in a disciplined and modest household in upstate New York, Richard often credited both of his parents for instilling values such as humility, perseverance, and compassion. His mother, in particular, represented patience and emotional steadiness, qualities that later resonated strongly with his spiritual journey and humanitarian efforts. Although Gere has generally chosen to keep his private grief away from public attention, he has spoken at times about how deeply his parents influenced his sense of morality and empathy. The compassion that appears in his activism and in the emotionally nuanced roles he has chosen throughout his career can often be traced back to the nurturing environment of his childhood. For that reason, losing his mother was not simply the passing of a loved one. It symbolized the end of a lifelong bond that stretched back to his earliest memories. Her death occurred during a particularly difficult time in his life as he was simultaneously navigating the final stages of a long and emotionally draining divorce. Under those circumstances, the loss carried even greater emotional weight. The reassurance and comfort that his mother had provided for decades suddenly disappeared. Even at the age of 91, her presence represented continuity, family heritage, and unconditional support. Earlier in 2004, Richard Gere had already experienced a frightening incident that served as a reminder of how quickly everyday moments can become dangerous. Known as an avid lover of the outdoors, he has long enjoyed horseback riding both for relaxation and for the quiet reflection it offers. During one such outing, while riding alone, his horse suddenly became agitated and violently threw him to the ground. The fall occurred suddenly and with significant force, leaving him injured and temporarily disoriented. Although he fortunately avoided life-threatening injuries, the accident resulted in a broken hand. The situation became even more serious due to the fact that he had been riding alone without a phone, leaving him unable to call for help. Despite the pain and shock of the fall, Gere had no choice but to gather himself and walk back on his own, an experience that reportedly highlighted both his vulnerability and his resilience. The accident forced him to temporarily pause his routine while he recovered and received medical care. Although the injury did not ultimately disrupt any major long-term professional commitments, it nevertheless served as a powerful reminder of the risks associated with the activities he enjoyed. Gere has always embraced pursuits that provide solitude and a connection to nature, choices that align with his contemplative lifestyle and spiritual beliefs. Yet this incident revealed the unpredictable side of such activities. Horses, despite their grace and training, remain powerful animals capable of sudden and unpredictable reactions. The accident therefore stood as a sobering example of how quickly control can vanish. Another unexpected controversy arose in April 2007 when Richard Gere attended an AIDS awareness event in India. The event was designed to promote safe sex practices and reduce the social stigma surrounding HIV prevention. During the program, Gere shared the stage with prominent Bollywood actress Shilpa Shetty. In an enthusiastic on-stage moment intended to energize the crowd and highlight the importance of the cause, Gere hugged Shetty and playfully kissed her on the cheek several times. While the gesture was meant as a lighthearted expression of support for a serious health campaign, images of the moment quickly spread through Indian media outlets. Certain conservative groups reacted strongly, arguing that the public display was inappropriate for a formal event. Protests soon erupted in several cities, and legal complaints were filed accusing both performers of violating public obscenity laws. Within weeks, lower courts in India issued arrest warrants against both Gere and Shetty. The controversy quickly escalated beyond what many initially considered a cultural misunderstanding. Demonstrators burned effigies of Gere, and calls for legal consequences grew louder. At the same time, supporters defended the context of the moment, emphasizing that the interaction had been consensual and occurred during a campaign aimed at promoting AIDS awareness rather than causing offense. Shilpa Shetty later publicly minimized the situation, expressing surprise at the level of outrage that followed the event. Over time, higher courts in India intervened in the matter. The arrest warrants were eventually suspended, and later legal proceedings formally dismissed the obscenity charges. As a result, the case was ultimately closed without further action. Gere never returned to India to face arrest, and the controversy gradually faded from headlines. Many years later, In February 2023, Richard Gere experienced another serious challenge when he suffered a health scare while vacationing with his family in Mexico. What initially appeared to be a typical respiratory illness quickly developed into pneumonia, a potentially dangerous condition, particularly for individuals in their 70s. At 73 years old at the time, Gere required hospitalization for observation and treatment, sparking concern among fans around the world when reports of his illness became public. According to reports, other members of his family were also experiencing symptoms during the trip, though Gere's condition required the most intensive medical attention. Pneumonia is an infection that inflames the air sacs in one or both lungs and can lead to serious symptoms including difficulty breathing, high fever, fatigue, and potentially severe complications if not treated promptly. For older adults, the condition carries greater risk due to a weaker immune response and the possibility of secondary infections. Gere remained under medical supervision for several days while receiving appropriate treatment before eventually being discharged to continue recovering. Although representatives later confirmed that his condition was improving, the episode served as a powerful reminder of how quickly health circumstances can change. Even for someone known for maintaining a disciplined lifestyle centered around meditation, yoga, and mindfulness. The hospitalization attracted global media attention and highlighted the enduring public concern for his well-being. Only a few weeks after recovering from pneumonia, Richard Gere suffered another deeply personal loss. In March 2023, his father, Homer George Gere, passed away at the age of 100. While living to such an extraordinary age reflects a long and meaningful life, the loss of a parent can still mark an emotionally profound moment regardless of how old one becomes. Homer Gere had always been a guiding presence in his son's life. Growing up in a modest Methodist household in upstate New York, Richard had watched his father demonstrate qualities such as discipline, humility, and responsibility toward the community. Homer worked in the insurance industry, but also dedicated significant time to civic engagement,